Okay, thank you everybody who's joined our webinar today on using the new features in JAWS 18. Our presenter today will be Danny Keogh, and he's in our Melbourne office. So I'll just first of all go through a few housekeeping tips and then I will hand over to Danny. So once again, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the session. Okay, so we will mute microphones during most of the webinar as we're recording it, so we don't get background noise. And if you're able to, you can type questions in the chat box on the bottom of the interface, and we'll stop for questions at different time points. And we will be, as I said, we're recording the presentation, so that will be made available afterwards. So, Danny, I'll hand over the presentership to you. And there we go.
Okay, so we should be up and running by now. Now, firstly, I'd like to apologise. We did have a couple of people who had signed on for this who were JAWS users, and I do apologise to them. The way we were hoping to have done this afternoon, unfortunately, due to a couple of technical difficulties, it would have been 100% accessible for, if there are any JAWS users who have actually got onto this, the way we were hoping to do it would have been 100% accessible, but unfortunately due to a couple of technical issues at my end to do with channeling the correct audio to the correct place, that proved to be a bit of a problem, and we only discovered this at the very, very last minute. So I do apologise if there were any JAWS users who were hoping to join this afternoon and who have decided not to, or who are joining this and have discovered that the GoToMeeting client is 100% inaccessible with a screen reader. So as I said, my apologies for that. Okay, what we're going to be looking at today, and normally we would have done this late November, early December, but our webinar schedule at that point was fairly busy, so it's kind of worked out well for us to delay this a bit. With the release of JAWS 18 and the subsequent, I think there's been 3 updates since then, 3 updates to version 18. There have been a couple of new features introduced with those updates, and one of them I'll actually be looking at today. That they were hoping to get out in the initial one, but it wasn't quite working as well as they hoped. So I'm going to go through 3 of the features and actually demonstrate them. And then the rest I'm just going to talk about and give you a little bit of an idea of what they mean, what it means for the user, and what's actually going on. So this will be a fairly short session, and then afterwards I'll just open up to general questions. So whether they're related to today's session or not, that's fine. Any general questions at all that are JAWS related, fire them at me. If I can help you out on the spot, I'd be happy to. If not, we'll take down some details and I'll see what I can do to get back to you on them. So let's get started. Now, one of the things that people often have problems with is migrating settings. In other words, you've got a copy of JAWS 17, and you want those same things to end up in your JAWS 18. Now that can be a bit of a problem normally because you have to get in and copy files and do all kinds of bits and pieces. Now some of you may remember that in the past there used to be an option that would allow you to do that. That was taken out in around about JAWS version 16. And the reason it was taken out was because there were fairly significant changes made to how settings were stored in terms of JAWS, and they literally had to write the importing and exporting and all that sort of stuff. They literally had to rewrite it from scratch. Well, in JAWS 18 they did reintroduce it. So if I press a button here, and I do apologise for the handling noise.
PC cursor.
Now at the
Windows M,
moment,
folder view list view, not selected recycle bin, 1 of what's new in JAWS 18.
Now you can hear that I'm using Karen as the voice, the Australian voice. At the moment we're running JAWS version 17. So what I'm going to do is close
Unloading
this
JAWS,
down.
quit JAWS dialog, enter. What's new in JAWS?
Yep, we want that closed, and I'm going to start JAWS 18. Okay, let me try that again. Okay guys, just bear with me for a second here, because I am getting no speech.
JAWS Professional Title Bar 2014. PC cursor.
There we go. Now you can hear there we've got no settings at all. We have JAWS version 18, which is basically a default install. There are no settings. I've changed nothing. Now, what would normally happen at that point if you did that, which you would come up with an option which said migrate settings. I've stopped it from doing that, and there's a good reason why I've stopped it from doing that. Because the fact is you can migrate the settings at any time you like, and I'll show you how to do that now. So,
Alt tab, go to meeting, title bar 20, JAWS Pro,
if we switch to the JAWS window,
Alt U menu, utilities menu,
into the utilities menu,
import/export sub menu,
import and
enter,
export.
export set, restore set, migrate settings,
Migrate settings.
M. Enter, leaving menus, migrate user settings dialog. An older version of JAWS was detected with custom user settings. Do you want to migrate settings to the current JAWS? Migrate settings from combo box, JAWS 17.0, 1 of 1. To change the selection,
At this point in time, this will go back to JAWS 17, and as far as I'm aware, version 16. You cannot migrate settings from an earlier version of JAWS. So if you're going from 15 to 18 or 14 to 18, unfortunately this will not work. And there's all sorts of reasons as to why that's the case, but it's to do with how the settings are actually stored and also where they're stored. Okay, so JAWS 17 is what we want.
tab, yes, but
So we hit yes.
space, migrate user settings dialog. Warning: migrating settings from JAWS 17.0 will completely delete any existing user settings. Do you want to continue? Yes button. To activate, press space bar, Alt
Okay,
plus Y.
we want to continue. Yes, we do.
Space.
Migrate results dialog, details: read successfully migrated settings.
And you can hear there that's migrated the settings, that's migrated the speech settings. We now have Karen as the voice, the whole lot. So any changes at all you would have made, anything at all you would have done will be migrated at that point. This includes any scripts, and for those of you who are not aware, scripts are a way of controlling JAWS. Most of JAWS is actually written based on a scripting language which controls how it reacts in situations. For example, if you're on the desktop, if you're arrowing through the desktop, all of that is handled by JAWS's own programming language or scripting language. This option will migrate those, it will migrate voice settings, it will migrate any modifications you have made to how JAWS behaves on the internet, place markers, anything at all will be migrated to the new version of JAWS.
Enter.
So now that we've got that,
JAWS
what else can we do with this?
Alt U, import settings ... export settings .
Export settings. If you have multiple computers, you are able to export all of your settings, and it's exactly the same as what would happen with migration, except it all stores it in a single file. So you can save that to a USB flash drive, you can save that anywhere you like. Take it to a new computer running JAWS 18 and then go for the option
Import settings ...
Import settings. And that will allow you to do it. So if you have a machine that you wish to clone all of the settings onto another one, that is very, very easy to do. So you've got export and import.
Restore settings ...
You can restore the settings. The difference between restore and backup, honestly, I'm not 100% sure. Sorry, the difference between restore and import, I'm honestly not 100% sure. They seem to do the same thing in my opinion.
Migrate import settings ...
So that's that one.
Imports menu bar. Leaving.
Very handy thing to have. Unfortunately, as I said, you are not able to go back earlier than JAWS version 16 with that, and that is because of the way settings are stored. Now, the second thing I want to have a look at, and we're going to play some music.
Migrate. Go to meeting. What's new in JAWS 1? Go to what's new in JAWS 1? Ellie Golding.
Now, I'm going to play some music here because I want to make a point. So those of you wearing headphones, you might want to turn the volume down a tad. Okay, that's quite loud. What happens if I play the music and try and hear what I'm doing with JAWS at the same time? You can't really hear it. You can barely hear it at all. It's there. I can hear it in the background. I can hear it in the background because I'm wearing headphones and I'm listening for it. And that music isn't exceptionally loud. That's a fairly standard volume for any piece of music. So we have an option to counteract that. If I go into the JAWS Settings Center,
JAWS Settings,
and bring up the default configuration,
Tree View, User,
open the users,
Kira Picture, Show Virtual, lower the volume of other programs while JAWS is speaking, not checked.
lower the volume of other programs while JAWS is speaking. This is turned off by default.
Checked.
So let's turn it on.
Enter 1.
And hit OK. And now I'll play the music, and then I'll start using JAWS.
JAWS Professional. PC Cursor. Windows N. Winamp Equalizer. JAWS Professional. Migrate results. Go to meeting. What's new in Go to meeting? 1. Ellie Golding dash still.
So basically what happens there, and anybody who is familiar with how VoiceOver behaves on an iPad or an iPhone will be familiar with that option, is that you now have the option where if the audio is playing, JAWS will drop the volume of that until it finishes speaking. It'll wait about half a second to a second, and then it'll bump the volume of your audio back up to full again. Now, the types of places this comes in really, really handy, I have to say, surprisingly enough, not surprisingly, I should say not surprisingly, would be YouTube. But surprisingly, one of the places where it does come in handy is on newspaper websites. Now, I know this sounds really odd, but anybody who has ever looked at The Age or in Melbourne or whatever the equivalents are anywhere else, Herald Sun, Daily Telegraph, or whatever newspaper it happens to be, a lot of you would be aware that at the same time as the article comes up, you sometimes also get videos. Now, finding the option to turn those off with JAWS isn't a problem. It's very easily done. The problem is half the time you can't hear the JAWS to actually get to the option in the first place. You can't hear JAWS to get to the link. So for situations like that, it's extremely handy. Now, one thing with this, actually 2 points to note with this. This will only work on Windows 8 or later. You cannot use this option on Windows 7, and that is because of the way Windows 7 handles audio. There is no way for JAWS to actually get access to things individually to be able to turn it down. So you'd need to be running Windows 8, Windows 8.1 or Windows 10 to be able to do this. And the other point to watch out for with this particular thing is it is a global setting. Now, what I mean by that is you have two types of configurations with JAWS. You have global and application specific. Application specific obviously would be if you want to do something like configuring Microsoft Word to do something without affecting anything else. You are able to do that. You can have different speech settings for different programs. You can have different verbosity settings, all kinds of things you can do. Most of what you can do can be application specific or global. Global basically means it's everywhere. Now, the lower volume option at this point in time, and they are looking to change it, we don't know when that'll be, but it is something they're looking to change. At this point in time, that is a global setting only. There is no other way to actually do it. You cannot set it application specific. But as I said, as far as we're aware, that will be changing, and we have been told that that will be changing sometime during JAWS 18's updates. There are several more to come. They generally run the updates up until about August. You'll probably see the last one to 18, and at that point they're starting to seriously work on the next version. So we're hoping it'll come sometime in JAWS 18. We were told initially that that's what would happen, and you would be able to set it by application, which could be handy for a few people. Okay, the third option I'd like to go through, again, we'll bring up the settings center.
Winamp-JAWS settings set. JAWS
Default
tree view.
configuration.
Mouse echo. Mouse echo. Open.
We have mouse echo. Now I don't know how useful this is going to be for totally blind users. I've been one myself. I must admit I very, very rarely have to use this. But other people, well, who knows? We do have people who are JAWS users who can actually use the mouse as well. And it is handy for them. We've actually been told that the feedback we've got from a couple of people who do that is it's actually incredibly useful to have JAWS reading what's under the mouse. Previously there were people who might just click on the odd icon and stuff like that and purely use JAWS for reading and other bits and pieces. But since this has come in, they've actually found that they're doing a pretty good job. So we've got a few options with this.
Level 1. Enable mouse echo not checked.
Let's enable it, because by default it's not turned on. You need to turn it on. Let's have a look and see what other options we've got with this.
Mouse echo interrupt checked.
Mouse echo interrupt. That is basically if something else happens while JAWS is reading what is currently under the mouse, then the speech will be interrupted. If you turn this off, whatever was being spoken because the mouse moved over it would finish before the next thing was spoken. Now if you're moving the mouse all over the screen quite quickly, you could start lagging behind and it would just be a mess. That's why this option is turned on by default.
Mouse echo delay no delay.
Mouse echo delay, no delay. You can put a delay in here if you like, so it won't actually read anything until you stop moving the mouse around. By default, there is no delay set.
Mouse echo unit line.
Mouse echo unit line, so we can set that to read the current line.
Paragraph 4 out of 4. Character 1 word to line.
Word or line. Yep. I tend to leave it as line. And that will take into account things like if you're on the desktop, it will take into account the fact that that is multiple column. JAWS is smart enough to realize that, and it will not read the entire line out. It will only read whatever icon you've currently highlighted.
Speak description of item not checked.
Okay, speak description of item.
Top of file. Select this checkbox to have JAWS speak descriptive information provided by the control that.
So that will tell you whether it's something like a checkbox or part of a list view or whatever it happens to be. Now by default that's turned off.
Tree view checked.
I'm not quite sure why, so let's turn it on. Okay.
Enter 1. Illegal.
So we've now got mouse echo
Windows M.
enabled.
Just home. Recycle.
Go up to the recycle bit. Now one of the problems.
1. JAWS Professional. Migrate result. Go to meeting. Title bar 2. 1. Migrate result. What's new in migrate. What's new in JAWS 8? What?
One of the problems that totally blind users have in moving a mouse is that it's very difficult for us to move it in a straight line. You'll find that we're actually all over the screen. It's very, very difficult for us to follow what's happening easily. So what they've done is they've actually introduced a way for you to be able to move the mouse in a straight line, and that is by holding down your JAWS key, which is either your insert or your caps lock, depending on your keyboard layout, and moving the mouse at the same time. Now that will force the mouse to move in whatever direction you were currently doing it. So
Home. PC cursor.
if we do this,
Navigation. Toolbar.
now
Cat navigate.
Now you may be able to see I'm all over the place with this mouse. I have no idea where it's going. It's everywhere. So let's go to
Windows M.
let's go to the desktop.
Home.
It makes a little bit more sense.
PC cursor.
Okay, so
Caps lock.
now why isn't it reading? That's strange. You really love it when technology works.
Caps FS Reader 3.0. List item. Caps lock on. Get caps lock on.
Okay. Right, let's try that again.
Just ask me any. Just gold wave.
So
list item.
Basically, that will force the mouse to stay in a straight line, even if I waver all over the screen. If I just try and
Desktop.
if I try and move the mouse normally.
Gold wave. Epson connects. Dragon naturally speaking. Desktop. CD Burner XP. List item. Desktop. List.
Really
C cleaner.
succeeding.
List item.
I know for a fact I'm not succeeding. So that will actually help me keep it going in a straight line. As I said, how useful that is to a totally blind user, I'm not too sure. But
what's new in JAWS 18.docs-word?
it is something that has been asked for, so it's something they've included. People have been asking for it for several versions, so they have included it. Okay.
Blank.
So let's have a look at some of the other new additions, and I'll just go through these briefly. So Vocalizer expressive voices have been added. Basically, these are incredibly responsive voices. Now I can demonstrate this here. If we load Notepad.
So P enter. Untitled dash note. PC cursor.
Now we're using the Karen voice here, and this is one of the newer Vocalizer expressive, the version 2.2. So if I start to type.
THISISATEST period.
If I hold a key down,
PC.
the response I'm getting is virtually instantaneous. There's no
What's new in JAWS 18.docs?
Absolutely no lag whatsoever. Now, this is a fairly high-powered machine that I'm working on here, but of course you do have situations where people have less powerful computers, but from what I've seen, it works almost as well on those. I think there is going to come a time when Eloquence, which is the old style mechanical voice that JAWS comes with by default, I have a feeling there will come a time when that will no longer work. As it is, that particular voice has not been developed for quite a number of years, and Freedom Scientific have kind of been able to keep it going. But I think there will come a time when that will no longer work. And when that happens, we're basically going to have to use these particular voices. So they're trying to make them as responsive as possible, in conjunction with Nuance. It's the company that actually writes them. So you get access to those, and they are free. Anybody with a copy of JAWS can download those voices. Even a demo copy of JAWS, you can download and install those. They will only work with JAWS, though. They will not work with anything else. Okay, so improved performance when running JAWS and ZoomText. Yes, ZoomText 11, which was released within the last month or two, and JAWS 18 now have pretty good compatibility. They're working on that, and we'll eventually get to the point where they're fully aware of each other and will work completely together. The compatibility now is extremely good, far better than it used to be, and that's something that AI Squared and Freedom Scientific are deliberately working towards, to get those two products to be able to interact. You do need JAWS 18 and you do need ZoomText 11 for that to work. Restricting the virtual cursor and web-based dialog boxes. This isn't something I'm going to demonstrate now, although it is something which will come up when we do our Google Docs presentation later in the year. And what that basically means is if you're in an application such as Google Docs and you come up with the option to save the file, what it does is it restricts the virtual cursor on the internet from leaving that particular part of the screen. You can turn that off, obviously, but by default it stops you from straying onto other areas of the screen that aren't necessarily relevant to what you're doing currently. But as I said, that will get demonstrated later in the year when we do our Google Docs presentation. I think it's in September or October. I can't remember which. It's one or the other. Launch JAWS on tablets using other keys. Okay, if you are in the situation, we do not recommend you do it, but if you have to do it, if you are running JAWS on something like a Surface Pro and you do not have access to the keyboard, you are able to launch JAWS It's something you do need to set up within Windows, and we can give more people more details on how to do that. It's something you need to set up, and you are able to launch JAWS with a couple of the hardware buttons by pressing a couple of the hardware buttons on there. Normally those controls are set up to launch Narrator, which is a built-in screen reader for Windows, a fairly basic built-in screen reader, but you are able to change it so that they can launch JAWS. Handy if you don't have a keyboard on you, but you do have a touchscreen tablet. Improved Google Docs support, that's something we will go through later in the year. Dynamic Auto Advanced Mode for Braille displays. This one's interesting. What you are able to do, some of you would be aware that you have a mode in JAWS where you can get it to read from your cursor location to the end of a document. You can do the same thing with a Braille display, and it's called Auto Advanced Mode. Now the way it works, the way it did work with a Braille display was you had a time delay, so it would display a line, however many seconds later it would flick to the next line, etc., etc., etc. But what they've done now is that still happens, but if you have a situation where you're reading some Braille and then you come across a line which only has one word on it, you no longer have to wait the full amount of time for it to actually advance. It detects how much is on the display and then adjusts the advance time depending on how much text is actually displayed at one time. So you are able to do things the old way. You can also do it this way as well if that's what you want to do. Support for right to left languages. This includes things such as Arabic. Now it's in its infancy at this point in time. I don't have enough information on this to be able to tell people exactly what it does and does not work with. But as far as I'm aware, it will work on web pages. I think, and I don't know for sure, but we can certainly find out if people want to know, I think it will work in Word documents as well. Now they're working to get it going in more places, and eventually I think the goal is to get it working on completely Arabic, Hebrew, and there are a couple of other languages, the names of which elude me at this point in time. They weren't ones I'd heard of. I think they are working on getting that running with full copies of Windows in those particular languages. So that's something which will happen. But keep in mind, at the moment, this is a beginning thing. For a screen reader to completely read the opposite direction, that takes a lot of work for them to do that. Okay, so Kindle support.
Okay.
You have version 1.2, I think it is, or later, if the book supports it. Now keep in mind, with Amazon Kindle, publishers do have the right to turn off the option to allow screen readers to read them. I do not know why they do this, but some do, and there is nothing you can do with those particular ones. JAWS will not read that. It has to honour that. The Kindle app doesn't let JAWS get access to the Kindle program for PC doesn't let JAWS get access to that information if that is not available, if it has been turned off by the publisher. So in a nutshell, that covers pretty much everything I wanted to speak about today. So if we have any questions, fire them at us and we'll see how we go. As I said, they don't necessarily have to be related to what we went through today. They can also be just general questions on anything JAWS related. If we don't know the answer, we'll try and get it for you and get back to you.
I just thought of a couple of questions, Danny. Is there a keystroke, well, both for just to quickly toggle the mouse echo on and off, and also the audio dubbing, the
audio ducking, yes, there is a keystroke, and off the top of my head, I do not remember what it is, but there is one.
Okay.
The mouse echo, no, that's an option you need to switch on in the settings center.
Okay.
But let me just try audio ducking. Okay. Audio ducking is what they call a multi-layer keystroke. So it's actually two keystrokes. I've just found out what it is. JAWS key and space, so insert and space or caps lock space, depending on how your keyboard layout is set up. At that point, JAWS will click. Actually, I'll turn the JAWS audio back on so you can hear this. So if I press JAWS key space, you get that little click and then the letter D.
Duck other audio.
Okay.
So audio ducking is now turned on. I do the same thing.
Do not duck other audio.
Do not duck other audio. So that's a toggle. Yes, you can turn that off and on without having to go into the settings center. Now keep in mind, if you do that, I think if you close JAWS down, and this is something I'd have to try, if you close JAWS down, it will revert back to whatever your setting was previously,
Right.
to whatever the setting is in the settings center. So I don't think it keeps that setting.
Okay.
Mouse Echo, as far as I'm aware, there is no keystroke for Mouse Echo.
Okay. And I think that's also a global setting as well from when I've played with it.
Mouse Echo is a global setting, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that. It is.
Yeah. So, okay. I don't think we've got any other questions, so I'll just put up our, let's take back the presentership. So thank you, Danny, for that. And we'll get that information around to anybody that was interested. Yeah. Okay.
Let's have a look at people. If people do have any queries, give us a call, email me, email anybody, email info@quantumrlv.com.au,
Yep.
email me directly, ring us 1300 791 777, and we can, as I said, if we don't know the answer, we can certainly try and find out.
Yep. And I think we've also got on our website, there should be what's new in JAWS 18 as well. And if you can always trial 18, if you've got an older version of JAWS, as long as you're on Windows, I think it's 7 or later, you can use 18.
Windows 7 or later, yeah. Basically, Windows XP support was discontinued in JAWS 15.
Yeah.
So to run 16 or later, you do need to have at least Windows 7.
Yeah, and you can normally have more than one, as you saw with Danny, you can have more than one version of JAWS on at a time.
You can.
So yeah, you haven't got to uninstall your current one to try 18. So, and we can always give you a quote for upgrading if you've got a current JAWS. So, okay, thanks everybody, and thank you, Danny. So,
No problem, thank you.
talk to you next time. Thanks.